Hello children and welcome to today's class on the poem The Photograph by Shirley Toulson. As in the last class we had already summarized this poem and we also went through the line by line explanation. Today I am going to revisit it in brief once again so that the ones who had attended the class are able to revise and brush up the content, whereas those who had missed, they will be able to revise. So this poem is basically a tribute to the poet's mother. This poem has been written by the poetess in the memory of her mother. So one fine day she comes across an old photograph in which her mother was 12-year old and she was standing on the beach, and it was a holiday, and along with her there were two more cousins of her named Betty and Dolly. So the moment the poetess looks at that photograph, she remembers about her mother, and all the memories come flooding back to her. And the moment she looks at that photograph, she recalls how her mother used to laugh every time she used to look at that picture. Her mother used to really find that picture funny, and she thought that the way they were dressed up for the beach for that sea holiday was really funny. So this reminds the poetess of her mother's laughter, which she cannot hear anymore as her mother is now dead. So she remembers her mother through this, and this is why she writes this poem. So now I'm going to read the summary. The poem is a tribute to the poet's mother. She is looking at an old photograph of her mother, which has a frame of cardboard. The picture has three girls, in which the middle one is the oldest and tallest. It is her mother when she was 12 years old or so. Beside her on both sides are her two cousins, Betty and Dolly, who are holding her hands and are younger than her. They went for paddling on a beach holiday. Her uncle took the photograph then. The poet could not help but notice her mother's sweet face. The sea touched her terribly transient feet, which depicted that she changed over the years and the sea remained the same. Now, after 20 or 30 years, her mother would laugh at the photograph. She would make the poet look at the photograph and tell her how their parents would dress them up for the beach holiday. The beach holiday was her mother's favorite past memory, while her laugh was the poet's favorite memory. Both of them lost something which they have cherished a lot, and yet cannot live that moment again. Those sweet moments were memories now. Now, the poet's mother had been dead for the past 12 years, which is the same number as of her age when the photograph was taken back then. She cannot express the grief that she has from her mother's absence. Now coming to line by line explanation. The cardboard shows me how it was when the two girl cousins went paddling, each one holding one of my mother's hands, and she, the big girl, some 12 years or so. So in these lines, the poet is looking at an old photo album which is made up of cardboard, which is why she is saying the cardboard shows me how it was. The cardboard is actually the picture. The picture is showing me how it was. In the picture, there are three girls who are walking on the beach holding each other's hands. When the two girl cousins went paddling, the second line, when the two girl cousins went paddling, it means there are three girls and they are walking on the beach. They are holding each other's hands. Paddling means walking on the beach. So the two girls, they are cousins, and the third girl is the mother. She is in the center. The girl in the middle is the tallest and oldest. The other two girls on each side are younger than her. The girl in the middle is the poet's mother. She is around 12 years old when the picture was taken. So the last two lines say, in each one holding one of my mother's hands, and she, the big girl, some 12 years or so. All three stood still to smile through their hair at the uncle with the camera. A sweet face, my mother's, that was before I was born. And the sea, which appears to have changed less, washed their terribly transient feet. In the above lines, the poet describes how the photograph was taken. Her mother's uncle took the photograph and told them to stop and pose. So now we know who has taken the picture. Because the second line is saying they smiled at the uncle with the camera. That means the photograph has been taken by the mother's uncle. He was clicking the photo and the three girls were smiling through their hair. Smile through their hair means basically that your hair is blowing with the wind and you are smiling. All three of them left their wet hair open and smiled at the camera. The poet's attention is drawn towards his mother's face, which is described as a sweet face. The photograph was taken long before the poet was born. The poet calls their feet terribly transient feet, as they were so young by then and now they had grown so older. On the other hand, the sea which touched their feet has changed less. So this line's meaning I told you, the last two lines, the sea which appears to have changed less washed their terribly transient feet. Transient means temporary, something that does not remain forever, something that changes and dies. That is temporary, that is transient. So the sea did not change at all, the sea changed very less, but mother's feet which were standing on the sea, they have changed terribly. They are terribly transient. Why? Because those feet obviously they grew up, they grew older, and then one fine day they died, which means that those feet don't even exist anymore. They stopped living. Whereas the sea was the same when she was 12 years old, the sea was same when she might have been 35-year old, and the sea is still the same after she is even dead. So here the poet is drawing a comparison between nature and human beings, that human beings live with the nature, but they are transient. Not just transient, they are terribly transient, whereas nature is permanent. Some 20-30 years later, she would laugh at the snapshot. See Betty and Dolly, she would say, and look how they dressed us for the beach. The sea holiday. After 20-30 years, she would laugh at the photograph. She would tell me to look at her cousins, Betty and Dolly, and how their parents would dress all three of them up for the beach. They would have planned to take a photograph beforehand. So these are the memories which the poet has of her mother, that my mother used to laugh when she used to look at this old picture, and she used to show me Betty and Dolly, and this is how she used to react. She used to find the clothes funny. The sea holiday was her past, mine is her laughter. Both rye with the laboured ease of loss, and that is the last line, and these are very deep meaning lines. The sea holiday was her past. When the mother used to look at the picture, she used to remember her past. And now when I look at this picture, I remember my mother who is no longer alive. So mine is her laughter. She no longer laughs at this picture. So in my mind, that laughter still is there when I see this picture. I remember the way my mother used to laugh at this picture. So the poet recalls the sea holiday was her mother's favorite moment from the past, while the poet's favorite moment from the past was her mother's laughter. Both the women would think about those past memories which they cannot live again. They tried their best to adjust to what they lost. Both rye with the laboured ease of loss. This line is important because laboured means something which you have done a lot of hard work on. So laboured means we have done a lot of hard work. Ease of loss means something that we lose very easily. So this is why it is an oxymoron. It is something in which both the things are happening together. So we both are tired. The poetess is saying that we both are tired because we both have lost something so easily, and we are so desperate. We are trying so hard to get it back. This is what this line means. That so easily we both have lost. My mother lost her childhood and I lost my mother. And it happened so easily. Ease of loss. It happened. Loss was very easy. It happened very easily. But now we are rye with the labour of the loss. Labour means we are the hard work that we are trying to put to remember our loss. So the amount of hard work that we have done, the amount of desperacy that we are trying to show to get it back, that is the labor that we are doing, and we both are tired because of that labor. So it is a quite complex line, and I hope you have understood it. If not, please email to me and I'll explain it to you again. Now she has been dead nearly as many years as that girl lived, and of this circumstance there is nothing to say at all. Its silence silences. So now, in the above lines, the poet says that her mother died 12 years ago, the same age her mother was in the photograph. Whenever the poet thinks of her mother's death, she cannot explain what effect she has of her mother's death. Death has silenced her mother, which has also left her speechless. As many years the girl lived, which was 12 years, that many years have passed since the mother died. That means now the mother has been dead for the past 12 years now. And of this circumstance means mother's death, there is nothing to say at all, which means I have nothing to say about my mother's death. I am speechless. I cannot express my grief. Its silence silences, which means the moment I think about my mother's death, it makes me silent. So silence here means its silence. The first silence means the silence in the death. When somebody dies, there is silence. So the silence of my mother's death makes me silent. So the second silences, it means make someone quiet, make someone silent, make somebody speechless. So the silence of my death has made me speechless. The silence of my mother has made me also silent. This is what it says. Its silence silences. So that was the summary of the poem and line by line explanation as well. So before we end it, let us also discuss the theme of the poem. It deals with the sense of loss and helplessness. It talks about the inevitability of death. Inevitability means something that happens to everyone, no matter what. Death is something that will come to everyone, no matter what. It talks about the inability and uselessness of expressing grief. So it talks about the, how the poetess is not even able to express her grief. And even if she is expressing it, she feels it is useless. It is not helping at all. Transient nature of human lives. This is one theme of the poem, that human lives are so temporary, they are not permanent at all. Revival of memories through photographs. So when the poet sees photograph, memory of her mother comes back to her. Similarly, when you see a photograph, that memory comes back to you. When you see the photograph of a vacation, you feel how you were feeling at that time. And when you see a photograph of something that reminds you of a sad thing, so it has that immediate impact on you. So how photographs revive our memories, that is one theme. Time takes its toll on life, that is another theme, that life cannot be untouched by time. Time affects everybody's life. So as time passes, more and more things happen to you and you cannot control it. It will happen. Moments in life that leave an impressionable imprint on our minds. This is another theme, that many a times there are little moments that you can never forget. They are not very fancy or big moments that you will, no matter what, you cannot forget them. Sometimes they are very tiny moments which might seem as something which is very simple and ordinary, but later on you remember those moments and you can never forget them. Just like how the child, the poetess, is not able to forget her mother's laughter. Coming to the literary devices, if you glance at the poem in your textbooks, you will be able to see that the following literary devices have been used. Alliteration in stood still, through there, my mother, terribly transient, silence silences. In all these phrases, you will see that the first word, the first sound is being repeated. Oxymoron is two contradictory ideas in the same line. For example, labored and ease. Labored means a lot of hard work. labor, and ease means something that happens very easily without any hard work. So this is contradictory. That is why it is an oxymoron. And epithet means basically an adjective used in a poem, something which describes something else. So for describing the feat, we have used the phrase terribly transient. So this is an epithet. So these are the questions which you need to do in your textbooks. What does the word cardboard denote in the poem? Why has this been used? What has not changed over the years? Does this suggest something to you? What is the meaning of the line, both lie with the labored ease of loss? What does this circumstance refer to? The three stanzas depict three different phases, and what are they? So that is the end of the summary as well as detailed line by line explanation of the poem. We also revised the poetic devices. If you have any queries related to the poem or photograph, please do let me know by emailing me on srsm9language@gmail.com. Thank you so much, children.